Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is May 22nd, 2024. You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today is Wednesday, which means we are going to be talking about all the news that we find interesting over the last 7 days. And boy, has there been a lot of it. And let me tell you who we is today. That's Beth, Jyunmi, Andy, Robert, and I'm Brian. So got 5 out of 7 today. Not doing too bad. And there is. This is one of those news shows where I feel like, number one, if we go down one rabbit hole, we'll never get past. We won't pass it in 30 minutes. And number two, there's just a ton in here. So just as sort of a ground rules here, if you could call it that, we typically take in the last 7 days. We try to go, basically from Wednesday to Wednesday, which not necessarily excludes. There's always stuff going on, but we really did some pretty big deep dives last week into OpenAI's announcements last week, as well as Google's I/O event. So this week we'll probably be more focusing on what came out as far as Microsoft, which has been a ton over the last 2 days, and we can dive into all of that. So with that said, do we feel like we want to start with Microsoft since there was like a lot there, like there was with Google? And maybe we will do our best to keep this to a short site. Actually, can I share one story? Because I just feel like I need to get this out. One story. Sorry. Okay.
Is it a fireman? Is it a fire story?
Is looking for a buyer after the AI Pin's underwhelming debut. I just literally read this 30 seconds before I went live and started cracking up. Not that I want anybody to like lose their job or anybody who works hard at Humane. I am sure they're amazing people, but the startup is apparently thinks it's worth between 750 million and 1 billion. And then Verge goes on to say, despite the deep software flaws and hardcore issues for its first product, I got to say, I mean, their valuation, they're using 2023 numbers before they went live with the device. And while they, I guess, had some updates when for Omni came out, and maybe that's a little bit better. But this last paragraph from The Verge, I think, kind of nails it. The list of potential buyers for Humane seems quite small, considering the price that the startup is hoping to fetch. Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, and Microsoft are all making significant pushes into the AI realm, with large language models and generative AI becoming more prevalent by the day. But it's unclear how much value Humane's intellectual property would really bring to any of their ongoing efforts. And I guess that's the part that I don't know. How much IP do they really have baked into it? But yeah, they're looking for a buyer. There's really just zero shock there from me. So I just want to start with that. No thoughts? Nothing?
Yeah,
nothing?
no. Sorry. Come on. Took a second to compose myself. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I feel the same. It's pretty hilarious that we're seeing one of these unicorn companies just turn, pivot 180 and like, okay, we're out. This was so bad, we're out. And
they couldn't stand up to the onslaught of Rabbit. That's
right. Their biggest competitor took them down.
Thump that was coming along was just too much.
Yeah, Thumper is sitting over here to my left. By the way, Thumper is not looking for an exit strategy. Thumper's going all in. So just a little inside baseball knowledge there. The people at Thumper let me know.
Humane. What do you think?
They are doubling down. They see what's going on in the. So okay, that's an old joke we were talking about in the show. I don't want to make that sound like it's real news. Okay. Yeah. So that was it. Does anybody else have any real quick stories that they desperately want to get out before we dive into Microsoft stuff?
Well, I've got a bunch of stories that might be quick, but let's do the Microsoft stuff first. Okay,
let's do it. Who wants to kick it off with Microsoft? Who feels like they have a good summary of all that's gone on over the last 2 days? There's been a lot.
Yeah, I can do a short overview. So Microsoft's Build event is currently going right now. Mm-hmm. And they had the classic 2-hour keynote speech to open it up and everything. But the big takeaways that I got was more Copilot, doubling down on more Copilot specifically for teams, and the big one, Copilot AI PCs. So they announced their new hardware, a new Surface is coming out. It's based on their new NPU ARM chip. They're making it an AI-first PC, so it's there on the desktop. They're making inroads to making it a full operating system in itself. demoed how you can converse with Copilot, and it'll analyze anything that's going on your screen. So, just like how we seen with OpenAI's 4.0, this is essentially just having a desktop app. It's baked in, right?
Yeah.
And there's hardware that is specifically designed to run it quicker, run it better performance. And so you've got it'll recognize the things that are on your screen. It'll analyze by taking screenshots of whatever you're doing with Microsoft Recall. It can recognize multiple languages, no matter what you're speaking to, and then translate what you're listening to a different language if you want. They had a demo of someone playing Minecraft and wanting to learn how to play the game and show, and then the AI explaining, oh, these are these elements that you have to pay attention to. They released released 5.3 Vision. Well, I'm just going through this litany. We can totally go into more detail. I'll let you guys handle it from there.
I wanted to just add one thing, because they do these demos, right? And it's like OpenAI. I'm not making fun of Microsoft or whatever, but the demo that Microsoft showed was this guy. Look, it's impressive because they're using vision and it's interactive, and it's kind of like what we just saw from OpenAI. And OpenAI kind of said, oh, we're only going to deploy this at first on Mac. Now I kind of think we know why, because they knew Microsoft was going to be coming out with this Copilot, and kind of why would you double dip there? But the guy's like, I'm going on a camping thing, and he says to the Copilot, it's going to be cold. Then he holds up this shoe that clearly is like an old Teva. If you remember Tevas, it's got 19 holes through it. And he's like, is this going to keep my foot warm? And I'm like, why don't you hold up a pair of reading glasses and be like, can I stare directly at the sun at this? Or what would you suggest, Copilot, I wear if I was going to look at the sun?
Look at Brian being hypercritical when, dude, if this was 5 years ago, you would have been blown away. But I think that your AI, you're because you've been in this so much, you don't realize how awesome that is. I agree.
Also, but why not a better demo? I mean, Robert, why not a better demo?
I thought it was a good demo, and this is what I thought it was good at. I don't think it has anything to do with Copilot. What he just showed was the future of websites. That was my takeaway. He just rocked the world of websites. And I think that's the important thing. You're not going to have a chatbot on your website. You're going to have a visual assistant that can look at something and say, am I wearing something that's efficient for, Patagonia? The ranks are fired up today. One of the other things that you didn't mention, Jyunmi, that I think is a big deal is recall. And I think that is...
Yeah.
I correct me if I'm wrong. I could have sworn we covered this a year ago. There's a company that came out with this. I swear.
Rewind. It's Rewind on Mac. So Recall on PC.
Okay, so I thought for some reason I thought maybe they bought a company and just stole the tech. But yeah, so whatever. This is weird, man. I don't know about this, because I know that years ago nobody would ever give their credit card information online. Now it's like, here, buy something online. Remember when that was the thing?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're going to get to that point now where we don't care. Sure. Look at my information, look at my screen all day long. I don't care. But man, you think about what you do on your computer every day for clients, for personal uses, for everything. As I don't know how many people are going to adopt this tech. And
that's the thing, right? Satya was in all of the interviews and talking about it and demoing, and he's like, oh, and it's all local. That was the big thing, was it's all local to your machine. There's the safety thing. And maybe I'm a little cynical, but the fact that they're hammering that in is not necessary. I mean, I guess that's good, but I don't know. I think I'm on the same page as you, Robert.
But you can turn it off and you can delete history, which is fine. But you're going to forget. You're going to forget what you recorded. You're not going to go back and delete stuff. You're not. You're just going to have it on there. So that's interesting. But I do say the new PC is also something I think has been just kind of covered briefly. And that's huge. This is an inference machine, a GPU, a TPU, and a CPU. So you got something that is going to inference on I knew this was, we all knew this was coming, right? Yeah. I just kind of didn't think it was going to be this. I thought it was going to be on the phone. So a whole whole laptop that has inference ready to go. But my biggest question is, well, which model? Like, and how do you update the model? Because that's going to be interesting, right?
Right. And so that's where the Phi 3 comes in, right?
Andy, you're muted.
Oh,
Andy, you're muted.
You muted. Oh, his mic's not working or something.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add that on the PC front, in competition with Apple and OpenAI, you have this gang of developers of PC laptops, including HP, Dell, Lenovo, Samsung, Asus, Acer, simultaneously announcing Microsoft, based AI PCs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think we heard the first news of it like maybe a year ago.
I wish I bought Microsoft stock.
Right.
Right. And NVIDIA stock and all those things.
Can we just take a quick pause here? This is not like yesterday with Microsoft or whatever, but the turnaround of the perception of Microsoft. I mean, when I tell you the idea of, a year and a half, almost.
Satya Nadella is genius. I think he's just the best CEO they've ever had. I mean, amazing.
You could not have paid me to use Microsoft Edge. You could not have paid me. I was like, it's a dinosaur. Forget about it. Then AI comes swooping through. But look, you got to get, like you said, Robert, give credit where credit is due. But like I just read that Microsoft Edge is now going to be able to do live translation for you on YouTube videos. So I can watch a video in Spanish. They said it'll be Spanish to English, English to Spanish, maybe to German. There's a few languages to start, but there'll be 150 languages in there before the end of next year or something. But regardless, if I can, it's not as much of a big deal. Be honest with you, with speaking English, obviously. But if I was going to watch I'm going to go to the Olympics in this summer. Okay, so I'm going to be in France. If there's some great videos about how to get sort of prepped and around the city, which is a big deal right now. Like my wife and I are sort of reading articles about, security things, and I have to get a QR code to get into certain areas, even because of where my Airbnb is and stuff. And they do put out these videos, but they are in French. So if I can just go to Microsoft Edge on my computer and turn on said YouTube video and know that it's going to translate it live or near live into English for me, that's massive. That's massive. And for all the people who feel like, Mr. Beast and all that feel like they have to have, 7 channels to handle other, Spanish related channels or whatever, and they're duplicating these videos, you're not going to have to do that anymore. You're just going to be like, it's like subtitles. I just want to listen to it now and be dubbed over in the language of my choosing. I don't know. Anyway, I just want to bring it up as like, that's a feature that they just came out and talked about. But also I just want to talk about like how Microsoft has just rebranded Microsoft. And
as a point of reference for the valuation increase that's a result of that turnaround, if you will, of Microsoft, it's probably been not so much a turnaround as it is a progression of long-term strategy that Microsoft's been pursuing. But just November of 2022, its stock price was around 250. And right now it's at 430.
Holy crap. Are you kidding me?
And 3.2 trillion market cap.
So the question that I have in terms of the YouTube translation idea is where is that data housed? So is this Microsoft capturing more data about translations, which means we don't know what languages people are, what sections of the country potentially from our video. There's a lot of information that we get based on who is doing the subtitles within our stuff. So yay. I think that's very exciting, but it also feels like, oh yeah, no, Microsoft wants a piece of that data collection pie, I would say.
That's a brilliant point, Beth. And I want to say that it kind of adds more anxiety to me. And I'm starting to have anxiety, not real anxiety, but like I'm having AI anxiety. What I mean by that is I used to think I was kind of staying up to speed on things. This month is kicking me in the butt. I can't quite keep up and stuff like that. You just said, like there's things that were happening 8-10 months ago that made this announcement last week or this week happen, right? They were ideating, they were visionaries of what they saw the future of those products and those AIs that I didn't even see coming. Like they had to build these AI PCs. They had to know that it was going to be capable of having an inference engine on, and the TPUs had to be built. Like, there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we are not even like close to being privy to. It's going to come out in 6 and 10 months, right? And so I'm just having, like, when you say that they're looking at being part of the data collection, like Google is, with their YouTube videos, I think you're right, and it actually makes me wonder that the speed of innovation, there's the innovation curve is going to go even faster because of it's like a snowball effect. Because now they have access to this data they didn't have before, and what are they going to do with that? Well, they can use that for the next iteration, which I can't even envision it. I have a vision for.
And this is a big deal, right? Because like YouTube or Google, who owns YouTube, is going to make this natively available on YouTube. And I'll go ahead and take a stretch here and say that within time, I don't know how fast, it'll have a Heian effect. So not only will it translate, my mouth will move with Spanish, Japanese, or otherwise on any video that we put up. We put up over 200 shows now on YouTube. I would imagine in the near future, whatever that is, that you will be able to watch every one of us on this show, all sounding like we do, speaking whatever language you toggle the button to, and our mouths will move reasonably with that other language, like we've already seen Heian and 11 Labs be able to do. I cannot imagine that's not a part of the roadmap for YouTube.
Right. But we want to, so YouTube understands what's coming, I believe, because it's all Google, but who knows if they talk from one side of the house to the other side of the house. But YouTube basically should know what's coming from Google. I think what's important for us to remember and keep and sort of key into what we're seeing is that Microsoft totally knows what's coming from OpenAI. They may not have access to release it, but they are privy to what that new stuff does.
For sure.
So I have to assume that this is somewhat in relation to that. And if I were going to make some imagination predictions, it's getting people used to the fact that your computer is going to be able to speak any language to you and you're going to be able to interact with it. Right. Yep. And so this is that. This is great for them. I do think it's a data collection. I think it's a great option, but I do think it's starting that hey, get used to the fact that you're just going back and forth with your PC and it will not matter what language you speak.
That changes a lot, right? Doesn't it? It changes a lot to the clients that I work with and the workshops that I'm doing and the integrations I'm having is now the company has the ability just to buy a PC for their employees and it has that built in. That's going to change the landscape a little bit, and just the interactions that they have with the technology. But even worse than that is, I'm telling you, I'm still having conversations with rooms of people who's like, "What's GPT?" Like that, I'm having that. It's like, dude, the gap is getting bigger, and I'm like, how do we get them up to speed? Because companies and businesses are not getting up. They're not smelling it. They're not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. And you are getting so far, but there's some companies that are jumping into it, like everybody on this call. But there's others that are like, what? That's I'm not going to get involved. That's just a shiny penny. It's just it's hype, but we know that it's not.
Stay tuned tomorrow when we investigate. It has AI plateaued.
Well, look, I want to add. I know we're still kind of talking about Microsoft. I want to add too, but I know we have other stories. I have ones about inflection and other ones I know we want to get to. Right. But what I want to say is I want to go circle back really quick to what you said, Robert, and bring up Jen's comment here about recall. Which only makes me think of the movie Total Recall every single time I hear recall. I'm just excited for GPT to have memory from one conversation to the next. I agree with that, Jen. What I wanted to add, though, is I do see a lot of potential for recall. And I will tell you one use case for me. I cannot stand project sort of management and stuff. And so I am sitting here at this computer and I'm working on work from 9 to 5, except when I'm stopping basically, or no, not 7 to 5, basically, except for when I stop to do this show. I'm working for Scaled, right? And so I'm bouncing around and I'm doing research over here or whatever. I am kind of for the idea that it can take my sum total of my day's work, tally up the time I spent here or there, be able to apply that in Asana, which is what we use internally, and then add that to the time card. I can't stand that stuff. That is just boring, menial stuff. And I'll be the first to say I get, tagged on that from coworkers and people are like that, like, hey, this needs to be in there. And honestly, I hate it. I hate that it's like doing dishes for me. I don't enjoy that process at all. So a tool that maybe can help with that. I understand the implications and sometimes I am stopping to do something for this show. And does everybody want that wrapped in with what they're doing for work? And I get it. We're all multitasking all the time. And I get it. Like, Matt Wolf was saying, like, people just don't want stuff on their piece. I'm not worried about the adult content. Like, that's not where my head even was. It was just like, oh, I'm multitasking some days and some content is going to be relevant to work and not. But also I can literally just like segment that out probably and say track this in this Chrome tab or whatever. So I just wanted to bring that up because
if you have to delete it, you shouldn't have it.
What's that?
My question. If you have to delete it, you shouldn't be looking at it anyway.
No, well, yeah, especially at work and stuff. I mean, I don't personally I have a home computer that I do work on because a lot of them use Macs at work, and I'm just not a Mac guy. So I use a fairly good laptop to do it or whatever. And so I don't know. I mean, I use it for my work stuff. I use it for my home stuff. I'm sure like a lot of people do. And the other thing I wanted to say really quick, Jyunmi, is like, can you imagine with the websites if we, obviously it's going to, Robert, you were saying how it's going to change interacting with websites and visual, but just think about like website design. If you're like, hey, I need to add this to my website to do it. And they're like, just spin it for me. And you're like, and they're like, great. And the 3D model is in Wix or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's good. It's like, good. Here's your widget. Add that to the thing. I mean, that's going to be, I don't know. That's where my brain went with that. That's gonna be
that is absolutely a brilliant. See, you guys are better at this than I am. I can't think far ahead. I don't even see the 6 inches in front of my face.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
We've termed yet another $1 million idea.
I know, but so I just my brain doesn't work that way. I just work differently. But I mean, like, I can see the value of what you just said. 100%. That is, man. I mean,
if they just imagine product photography, right? If all you have to do is hold the product up to your computer, and then it's like, okay, create. There you go, boom. All right, now we have a 3D model of Thumper.
Has a photo shoot.
We can create whatever motion or graphics in the background now with like a Sora or a Pika.
Well, they have 3D. They have 3D AI models now. They're not very good. They're getting better, but yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing,
like from 2D to 3D, they're predicting what the back of it looks like, which is crazy.
And whoever thought Microsoft Paint was going to come back, whoever thought that was going to have a comeback, nobody.
Right. Exactly.
The other thing about that is that the tech that was like really great, because it was part of your iPhone, like maybe 3 months ago. What is time in the age of AI? I'm going to say maybe 3 months ago. Was that you would walk around an object. And it would record it, and then you would be able to create that 3D. Now you're just sitting in front of your camera and you're spinning the object. So that's one part of that improvement. There have been a couple stories about acquirements and new relationships formed. Autodesk has acquired Wonder Dynamics, and Wonder Dynamics is a company that does sort of live motion cap without the motion cap suit. So you can have someone who is moving or like it's a movie company, right? So it's a special effects movie kind of thing. You can have a character that is a human speaking, and then you can paint over it or insert the 3D model of that. So that went to Autodesk, which, as Jyunmi said, has Maya. Microsoft did not acquire, but has a relationship with Devon, which amid all of this other stuff, was sort of slid under the radar. But it does not look like it's going into GitHub. It's really like still a separate thing, but they are partnering with Cognition. And let me pull up the other one because I totally forgot what the third was.
It was
Free Pick. It was Free Pick acquired Magnific. So Free Pick now has an upscaling, a massive upscaling situation just because it acquired that. Because Magnific has been really kind of interesting. So lots of people, lots of new things happening, lots of people joining. I think.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of small stories now. And so Adobe, they brought Firefly generative remove to Lightroom. So anyone who's in the Adobe sphere, now you can use their generative remove. So if you caught a lot of things that you didn't want in the background of your photos or whatnot, you can simply erase it, and it'll be filled with what the AI thinks should be replacing it. On Hollywood news, CAA has evolved their vault into data rights management or rights management now. And they, let's see what they're calling it. They're calling it a virtual media storage system. So all of their A-list talent, if CAA is one of the largest reps for artists in film and things like that. But now they're expanding it to, besides actors, being athletes, comedians, directors, musicians, basically the whole gambit. And they'll scan you completely and put in all your digital copies into the vault. But now they're expanding out the features to be more of the rights management side. So they'll allow you to control how those rights are leased out or released, and look more into the enforcement side of things like that. So it's an interesting announcement, and probably a natural evolution of what they were going to offer it. And they call it CAA Veritone, right? They're partnering with a company called Veritone to provide the rights management side of things. And then finally, on the good AI story that I found, Penn State released some new research. They were able to use their AI to identify 26% more novel gene and trait associations for autoimmune diseases. So what that correlates to is a huge increase in being able to detect possible gene-based using like mutation code and things like that to early identify possible autoimmune diseases in people. So that's a big win for the medical application of AI. That's what I got.
Nice. Andy, mute.
Thank you. Dog barking causes me to mute more frequently than necessary. I have three things that I found very interesting in the news this week. One, Scale AI raised $1 billion. Scale is, this is in the context of training AI models. Like anyone who's out there doing large language model training or any kind of AI training needs voluminous data to feed that training process. And Scale develops the data for that purpose. And so raising $1 billion shows you just how large the sort of the supply chain of data is for these large language model developers to acquire that data. And they supply this kind of data, it's labeled data, so that the training can be monitored, and the humans who are monitoring that training can provide feedback to the model and improve its training. So that's one thing. The second thing is that Apple announced that they're going to add or soon will release eye tracking for the iPhone and the iPad. Now, this has immediate application to accessibility. We've talked about Neuralink, Elon Musk startup that is putting an insert into the brain that allows that one user to be able to manipulate a cursor on the screen just with thoughts. Well, the same thing can be accomplished if the screen can see where you're looking. So you can imagine looking and having a cursor follow exactly where you're looking, but then you have some other way, maybe by blinking, if you're, like a completely paralyzed person. By blinking, you can lock the cursor to where you want it to stay. And then by blinking twice, you can make it click that. So very much easier user interface and a lot of possible applications beyond just the accessibility ones. Then this is the one that really intrigued me, which is Anthropic. Anthropic released news about their ability to map the mind of a large language model. Now, we know and we have discussed that a large language model creates the responses with no interpretability previously, no interpretability of how it arrived at that conclusion. Like these neural networks are so deep and so inscrutable, you can't really go in and look at them. Well, Anthropic has been working behind the scenes to be able to identify those clusters of these simulated electronic neurons that represent certain concepts. And they went so far as to be able to manipulate those groups of mathematical model clusters, if you will, so that they could do things like change the output that was trained into the model. So at the time of inference, we don't have a visibility into it. But now for Claude and those Claude models, Anthropic has been able to go in and see exactly where a certain output is being generated and be able to manipulate that one. And they gave some examples in their research paper about this. So check it out. Anthropic research, mapping the mind of a large language model. Really fascinating exploration of what deep neural networks are doing for us in AI.
Yeah, that is really cool. I have 3, but I can go really quick on that because I know we got a few more here. Really quick, Inflection, who I wasn't sure with what had happened with Inflection, the CEO going to Microsoft, and Microsoft didn't sort of same thing, right? Beth, they didn't buy them, but they seem to have a lot of influence. So this is a blog from the new CEO, and it's called Redefining the Future of AI. You can find this at Inflection AI. And if you're not familiar, they're the ones that make Pi, Pi. And man, Andy, you turned me on to Pi last year at some point, early last year, probably. And I still think it's probably one of the cooler technologies out there. Well, he has a nice blog here talking about 3 new chief CXOs, let's call them. But what's more important here is that having proven this vision with a platform used by over 1 million people daily, we have now embarked on a new journey to bring this technology to organizations. That's the important part, to help them harness the transformative power of AI. And undertaking this magnitude requires many different contributions. And then he goes to talk about the new people on the board, playing CXOs and so on and so forth. But what I find is interesting really is sort of the pivot here from maybe it's going from B to C to like kind of B to B basically. And that they're going to be working with companies about how they can use the Pi Inflection technology for their businesses to create unique voices within the business. I commend them. I sort of root for Pi, and I never really know why, but I'm always like rooting for Inflection. Like when I heard about the Microsoft stuff, I was like, oh man, not Inflection, but it sounds like they have a new plan and a new vision, which is super cool. Another thing I wanted to share really quickly, because I have good friends that work at Pixar. This is sort of AI adjacent. Pixar laid off about 175 people yesterday, and this was the second round of cuts. My friends that work there, they weren't affected, but they're like one big family there. I have had the opportunity to go to the Pixar studios, and it definitely feels like that. It's just a very, very cool campus, the way they built it, and everybody feels like family. You have a lot of breakfasts and meals together there and stuff like that. So it kind of hit them hard. And why I say it's AI adjacent is really a lot of this is about Disney correcting what they did during the pandemic. And I remember my friends talking about it is like they were sending these Pixar movies straight to Disney Plus because of the pandemic. But that really did deeply affect Pixar, because if people get used to getting Pixar quality movies at home, well, then it gets really hard to reverse that and get them to come back to the theaters. So they have movies like Inside Out coming out, but it also speaks to the larger conversation about how AI is impacting animation, how Disney is looking at the bottom line, how they feel like they can do more with less. And, not that we haven't seen this before, but, just kind of a bummer, especially when I had connections there to kind of see those layoffs and affect those 175 employees. And then last but not least, Meta has introduced Chameleon, which is a state-of-the-art multimodal model. They have Llama 3. Meta's the one behind that. It's an open source model. I do not believe this one is open source, but Chameleon sounds like it's going to be similar to Gemini based. If you read this whole article, which is from venturebeat.com, it sounds like it will be similar in nature to the way it's built with early fusion token based mixed modality or modal architecture. We don't need to get into that right now, maybe for another conversation, another show. But Meta's in the multimodal game too. And, the common thread you see in this story is that they are building it from the ground up. They are not trying to make Llama 3 work for something that's going to be vision. They built a model from the ground up, which, if you remember, is exactly what Google was saying as well with Gemini's. We built this from the ground up to be always multimodal. It's not a text-to-text language model. So just want to share those 3 quick stories as well. Any others?
No? That's pretty much it. Oh, I do have a small story about a company called Praktika. They just raised $35 million to use AI avatars to make learning languages feel more natural. And I got that story from TechCrunch. Essentially, what their plan is to, instead of just do translations like most instances are, where they'll translate into whatever language, they're trying to help promote people learning languages, but create AI avatars for people to interact with. Because it's always easier for humans to interact with something a little more than just, listening to it and rote memorization and things like that. So it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting proposal they have. I agree with the basic concept. How that's going to work out with these latest translation, inroads, things that Microsoft's doing, like we were talking about the YouTube translation, stuff like that. We got to balance the teaching people other languages and gaining, insight from the culture and immersion from doing that promotes understanding and things like that versus, oh, okay, cool, it's translated. I'll just speak English and you guys can absorb it that way. So
there's always going to be a market for, actually, like you said, Jimmy, deeply learning other languages. My wife and I have often, I don't know, it's a little bit bigger than pie in the sky, but not something that we have fully fleshed out. But we talk about moving to Portugal, South Portugal, in the near future, once my daughter is established and all that kind of stuff on her own, not to retire, to continue to work there, but move to Portugal nonetheless. And I think that's a great example, Jimmy. Like, I've struggled personally at learning languages. I find it hard. But I'll be honest, if there's a great solution like that with some Meta glasses or whatever the future of that is in a couple of years, and I can virtually get up in the morning and I'm in a simulation, right? And it's like a Sims type thing. And it's like, let's go to the bakery and get bread, let's go. And then I move my little avatar over, in Meta or whatever, and I go to the bakery. And to your point, there's these avatars that are able to naturally converse with me, regardless of what I say. And I'm not, boxed into like what you're saying, like a Duolingo, which my wife does great with, but I struggle with. Then I think that's like a huge thing, because I would feel a lot more comfortable being able to be wrong and the anxiety wouldn't be so high for me. And it would be great in a system like that. And I'm sure they're building this. This isn't one of these million ideas because somebody's building this. But like, you go into the bakery in that avatar, and if I struggle and I'm like, it's the how would you say blah, blah, blah. And then the avatar goes, do you mean in Portuguese, do you mean this? And I go, yes, that's what but now we're having this natural, just like I would, because a lot of people do speak English in Portugal. So having somebody who was willing to work with me, my friend who moved over to Germany, his wife is German, and he moved over to Germany several years back. What he ran into was so many people knew he spoke English and they wanted to practice his English. And it was a Spider-Man pointing at people situation where he's going, wait, no, speak German. And they're like, oh, I get to practice my English. He's like, no, speak German because I want to understand. So it was always this like crazy standoff. And he was like, trying to get them to speak German so he could learn it in their, living in Germany. Now he's fluent. But they were so excited to hear somebody with an American accent. They're like, oh, I can practice my English with you. So having a avatar way of doing that, I think, is a great add-on, and probably honestly the only way I'm truly going to learn another language. So I need it.
Yeah, you make a great point. That positive reinforcement in a safe environment is definitely going to help people learn the language. Because I'm totally with you. Like I'll have a little bit of anxiety too. Like whenever I travel, I'm like, okay, am I saying this right? I don't want to embarrass myself or them or just piss them off. Really, like if I'm asking at the bakery, oh, can I have a pretzel? And I say it wrong, they're just going to be like, oh my God, that kind of situation.
And they give me Nutella and I go, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Not chocolate.
Right.
What is wrong with you? That's not the same thing. All right. We should probably wrap things up today. Hey guys, tomorrow we're going to basically be continuing this conversation, not necessarily meaning news, but we're going to be talking about, as all this stuff that we talked over the last 2 weeks, and God knows there's been a lot of announcements and progress on AI front over the last 2 weeks. But is that just a flash in the pan? Are we really seeing that this bubble is in fact about to burst? Are we about to cap out on what some of these models do? Once we get past the multimodal and we have vision and we have all this, where do you go to there? To the fourth dimension? So we're going to talk about like what all that means tomorrow. Is AI at a point where it's slowing down or about to? Is this hockey stick growth going to stall out eventually? Is this another dot-com bubble? That's tomorrow's conversation. So come back to have a fun one with us on that. See where we all land. Hopefully Robert will be back. I know he was shaking his head yesterday. And then on Friday, we have our 2-week recap show. What we usually call is like the wait, hold on. What did we just say? Because we're going to talk about all the stuff that has come up over the last 2 weeks. It's always a super fun show. And I recommend you guys coming back. And hey, just, we don't say it every time, but look, we appreciate our listeners and our viewers on YouTube. Man, we're growing. Talk about hockey stick growth. This show is growing and growing and growing. We have big plans for it. But one way that you guys can definitely help us out is by, if you love what you're hearing, liking, subscribing, all those good things. They really do make a difference. I know you hear all the other YouTube people say that too, but it helps us grow, frankly. And we would appreciate it if you're loving what we're doing, then to give us a like or subscribe. That goes a really long way on our end. And it's an easy way to support. Cost you nothing. So that's it. Hope you guys have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. See ya.
Aloha.